My name is Etienne Jongh. I did my undergrad at the University of Alberta in the Faculty of Ales, which was really great. I did a Bachelor of Science in Animal Health, and now I'm doing a DVM program with the University of Calgary. I'm originally from South Africa, and my family has always been farming in South Africa, mostly sheep and wheat, but that's been going on for a long time. And I guess my parents were the first to kind of move away from that, and then my brother and I were the first to be born in more of an urban setting. And so it was, we try to keep everything, all our traditions kind of close growing up. And when we moved to Canada, we got an acreage, and I kind of got into chickens and bees and all that fun stuff. But it was really important for us to keep our agriculture roots close. And so I just kind of continued to pursue that through high school, just volunteering at clinics and ranches. And then in my undergrad, Ales just seemed like a great opportunity to stay connected kind of with the agriculture community, but also try and meet some of my professional goals. The goal of the project was to develop a chicken coop building plan that just had some academic background. So research from all of us who had done some research, know how to meet the needs of these small flocks, but also to make it sort of personal for more communities, because most of the plans that we were finding were from the United States, and in a lot of those areas, the conditions are a lot warmer, and so a lot of the plants just aren't really suitable for the climates and the challenges that you have here in northern Alberta. So the goal of it was to develop the actual building plan, and print off like a little bit of a pamphlet guidebook that we could share online, and ultimately give that to the Heritage Chicken Project that's headed up by Dr. Frank Robinson at the University of Alberta. I definitely learned it's really difficult to create housing plans or guidelines for poultry. We were just talking about how even just for this housing design, deciding whether we want 20 chickens or 5 chickens, we found with lots of the other legislation, there's lots of guidelines for keeping chickens in cities and all that. I'm trying to have a easy to read guideline for these owners is difficult because there's so many different ways that they can be realized in the community. You can have anything from rural areas who have access to a ton of different feed, lots of animal experience, lots of materials and land available, to a small town where they might be getting into contact with pet birds or something like that. It's just a lot harder to develop any universal guidelines than we thought at the start. So we have quite a few models here, for some that are more stylized than others. The one that we predominantly used to talk about our chicken coop was this one, just with the main struts removed. So this coop here is built with 4 4x8 sheets on the floor, but this can easily be changed if it's a smaller coop. Just by turning one of these sheets horizontally, it can become a little bit smaller, and you can even this rectangle design, you could even just reduce it down to these 2 sheets with a smaller coop. And if you have 2 chickens, you could maybe not fit everything in, but you could definitely try with the 1 sheet, but it adds a little bit of modularity to it. It is double walled and it has insulation, and I think that's what makes it look quite clunky, but the insulation is really important for coop design in northern climates. We also wanted to make sure that this spacing would fill the insulation needs, whether it was foam or a fiberglass buffets. And we also found that a lot of the buildings plans from the States had the eggs rolling outside of the coop, and we wanted to make sure that if we had eggs rolling away, which is really good for keeping the eggs clean, we wanted to make sure that they were also rolling into a heated environment where they wouldn't freeze. So that one requirement, along with our requirements for biosecurity, ended up coming up with our main kind of feature of this coop being this little clean area here, which is just this boxed off area here. Now, what this boxed off area is meant to be is you are able to come in here and you're able to collect the eggs, which roll out into this area here. You're able to fill up the feeders and you're able to fill up the waterers. I think one of the models over there actually has the little door panels built into the wire here so that you can open them up and fill up the water in the feed. This is something that we also had in our coop in Whitecourt, and it worked really well because it keeps an area completely clean. It's a lot of people want to show off their small flocks, and this way you can do it by coming in here instead of having people from different yards trample in onto the bedding and maybe bring in potential hazards and diseases. You can collect the eggs. The eggs are warned because they're inside of the coop, and it avoids you having to build anything on the outside. It's a really functional design. It worked really, really well for us. So it was really, really important that we included it here as well. Some of the other features that were important, we have nipple waterers on these buckets here. The bucket design we actually described in the manual as well is pretty easy to create with normal 5-gallon pails. And in very, very cold winters, the buckets, the hanging buckets are ideal because you can either throw in a heater on the inside or you can wrap them with a pipe heater and insulation. And that way you can keep the water warm and prevent it from icing over, so the chickens will always have access to that water. Lastly, we also have we actually had 2 designs for this. We have our roost, and below the roost, we have this little hammock here that kind of clips into these little C's. We weren't really, I didn't even color this in because we weren't really concerned about how this hammock is deployed, but just the thought of actually having a hammock under the roost, because chickens, most of the droppings will be under the roost as they spend a lot of their time sleeping there in the winter. And that's a tough spot to clean up. And oftentimes that will be one of the areas that's neglected. It'll end up having rot under the floorboards, and then mice can get in. And so we wanted to focus on a couple of ideas of keeping this area clean and making cleaning easier. So the hammock functions to catch a lot of these droppings off of the roost, and with the clips, you should be able to easily remove the hammock. Of course, you would say that the roost is then in the way, but the roost actually flips up, and on one of the models with the ceiling, there's little hooks, and you can just flip this up, and with a chain, you screw in the hook and you just flip the chain around and it holds it up. And that way you can get that hammock out of the way. And importantly, you can scrape out this whole area out of the outside of the doors. On that note, we wanted the doors to be wide, full-size swinging doors, both to make it easy to clean, but also for added ventilation. Ventilation is really, really important in the winter, but also in the summer, because we have kind of extreme conditions here. You saw 2 summers ago and it was just crazy, crazy hot. It's hard to meet those needs with a coop, because you don't want to have active ventilation or big gaps in your walls during the winter, because then all the birds will freeze. But you also want it to be able to ventilate enough in the summer when it's super humid and when all that snow is melting, so that you don't get massive builds up of ammonia and all of that bad stuff. So these wide swinging doors, what you can do is this area, since it's completely fenced off, you can open up these windows, but you can also just leave this door completely open, which allows this whole thing to be ventilated if it's really warm, which gets a ton of airflow in there, which ended up being really useful. We tried to look around for more cold weather coops, and there really isn't a lot, and there especially isn't a lot with coming from academic institutions. Most of the building plans that are available now, the really good ones, are available from universities down in the States. There just really isn't any in Canada, and I think that's because when people do a search, they don't have anywhere really to start. They don't really realize, wow, there's a lot of differences. It's not, a chicken coop isn't just a chicken coop. Like, lots of things have to change to make it cold suitable. Just the ventilation being one of the biggest criteria, that you have to have a really flexible ventilation scheme to make it work. And we're hoping that this will maybe inspire some other people in academia to pursue projects. We know our coop isn't the be all end all, and there's really still opportunity for really small coops for just a few chickens, and making that really cold tolerant. So yeah, we're hoping to use this as maybe a Kickstarter for some future innovation. just had to think about kind of what my experiences were and where it looked like things were kind of turning. And it feels like when I was much younger, maybe the experience of my parents as well, was that it felt like it was really hard to actually influence things on a global scale, because suddenly everything just blew up, with the internet. Everything is suddenly, global, and you just feel like such a tiny raindrop in a pond, and you just can't really do anything. I think we've come to a stage where that's kind of matured a little bit, and now we have more distinct little communities, and we're more aware of those huge impacts that we can make in those communities, and the huge effects that those actions can have. So I think it was almost maybe a little hopeless growing up, because it felt like it was this massive arena that you couldn't do anything. And to now there's so many community initiatives going on, and so many people focusing on how to help their little ecosystem. And that's actually making it, giving me a lot of hope, because it's so attainable, because you can actually see the impact that you're making. If we design this Coop for our little community, and when I say little, I could mean, in northern Alberta, and I can actually make a difference in northern Alberta by having a cold weather chicken coop. I don't need to be, the greatest chicken coop architect of all time. I can make a difference just in this little area, and I think that's being shared by a lot of my classmates, and I think it's probably just going to get stronger growing up. I mean, there's a few reasons. One, my family history being in South Africa, and being part of the really rooted in the agriculture there, and then also moving here, growing up with my chickens and everything in Whitecourt. Although it's not, growing up on a farm, I feel like you still connect a lot with that small town spirit, and so there's a lot of that coming with me. And then as well, more professionally, just the time that I've spent working on ranches or in rural clinics with mixed animal, working with some producers, that I love connecting with the people in the community there. And so I would love to keep doing that in the future.